So today we're interviewing Shane McElroy, who is Global Head of ATM Strategy at Fexco, an Irish-based fintech who have deep expertise in FX, as well as treasury, digital tax, and government-backed financing sectors. Shane's 26 years of experience in a business with a global focus give him a uniquely broad and deep perspective of the ATM industry. And his focus on DCC, dynamic currency conversion, is something we'll be talking to him about today. Shane, thanks for taking the time to speak with us.
Great to be here, Ben, and thanks for you and for Cashflows to give us the opportunity. Delighted.
Perfect. So I'd like to start with a continuation from our interview series on ATMs, which is an important one, I think, for the ATM industry overall. I'd like to know what you think has been the way forward for maintaining cash in society. And there's a split, it seems, between opinions leaning towards it being a responsibility of government to secure access to cash. On the other hand, there's something that there's still an opportunity for banks, deployers, etc., for themselves and for profit motives. Do you have an opinion on that?
I do. And as Ron Del Nevo would say, it's choice. Choice is the key. And I think that's where we need to be. Look, we can't argue the cash usage has reduced over the last number of years, but the volume of payments has actually increased. So, as a percentage of overall payments, cash is kind of maintaining its own presence. And in actual fact, the volumes of cash in circulation have never been higher than they are today. Fair to say that over the last 2 years, many stats around COVID and the rise of contactless and the decline of cash have really been out there in a strong sort of manner in various different forms of media. But it's very interesting to look at the narrative around it. So who's driving the conversation? And typically, the people who are driving the conversation are the card schemes, alternative payment methods, acquirers, etc. And also, when you take a look at the media from the business and consumer perspective, it's really a copy and paste exercise that is kind of going on. This coupled with misinformation around the safety of cash and transmission of COVID did not help the cause of cash over the last 2 years. But I actually think that narrative is changing a small bit. When you take a look at the Bank of England quarterly bulletin for 2022, it talks about the key role of cash plays in society. The survey that they've actually released, it shows a decrease in cash-only premises. So the number of premises that are saying we only accept cash, we only accept cards, we don't accept cash, that is decreasing and people are falling back to cash. They've also said taking action to ensure that the wholesale of cash distribution infrastructure remains effective and sustainable. Good to see this sort of action coming from the Bank of England at last. In an Irish context, which is local to ourselves here, the central bank, they just kind of said the consumers are withdrawing larger amounts of cash this year. The number of withdrawals, as an example, in January 2021 was 5.2 million, but now in June 2022 was 7.5 million. So we're seeing the volume of cash actually being withdrawn has never been higher. But look, with some financial institutions, the number of ATMs, reducing the number of ATMs, it's making it harder for people to actually get their cash. And with merchants declining to take cash, it doesn't really sound like a choice to me. So in today's environment, with interest rates rising, inflation, people are much more financially aware. And in that regard, the usage of cash is kind of coming more and more back into circulation. And you've got to take a look at, who is actually going to drive this conversation? And to me, it's back down to the governments. They need to step in. They need to enforce cash acceptance and availability. We as industry leaders, we need to be aware as well as to how we can actually support that. But this is, has never been more important, when you do take a look at the inflation that is going on and the different demands that are there within countries. There's large pockets of society that are actually unbanked today. You take a look at in certain markets, between 5 and 10% of unbanked people would be the likes of the US, France, and Portugal. And in between 10 and 20% are Poland, Greece, and the Czech Republic, along with much higher percentages in other countries. So this, as an industry, we can facilitate cash usage, we can drive it, make it more available for people, but really it does take governments to actually step into play.
That makes perfect sense. And in terms of driving it ourselves, I mean, obviously Fexco has a expertise in DCC. What is that specifically doing to shape the industry? And have you seen some results so far with the implementation of DCC across various estates?
Yeah, I think so. I think we have, otherwise, to be honest, we wouldn't be in this business today. But look, we acknowledge that the cost of running an ATM estate is very high. Cash management is expensive. And I suppose many estates really are on legacy platforms as well. And it's hard to actually implement new initiatives. So, look, DCC is a new service for many ATM owners. DCC has been around since 1995. Fexco actually brought it to market, but probably more so in the retail space and the online space. It's only coming into the ATM space more laterally. Some countries were ahead of the mark, the likes of Spain and the UK, but some other countries are only catching up as well. For Fexco, look, today we're offering DCC at ATM across many banks and IADs in about 14 different countries, and we provide it to about 350,000 merchants in 60 countries. So look, it's fair to say that DCC is a very popular service. But the key driver here is to unlock the FX revenue on those international customers. And these are international customers that are using people's ATMs on a daily basis. So they are existing transactions. So for our banking customers, it means that some ATMs in their network that were not viable now are. And in some cases, we've seen banks grow their network in a similar fashion to IADs. For the IADs, DCC is a key revenue driver. Many IADs wouldn't be operating today if they didn't have the capability of DCC. I don't know of any IAD that DCC is not top of their agenda. And we're seeing out the IADs expanding now into new regions, new countries, and we're delighted to help them in that growth. But look, let's be clear, DCC is not just a plug and play solution. It needs constant management around card scheme, risk, compliance, flexible margins, best practice, etc. And our model is particularly one of partnership. We look to drive the revenue for them. We're very brand conscious, very aware. It has to be a fair and competent offer back out to the cardholder, making sure that's a compliant solution across the schemes, local regulations, and treasury management. So yeah, DCC is a clear driver for those ATM opportunities that are out there.
It makes sense, and it's revenue opportunities I think we're focusing on here, and
Sure.
The added functionality being a key part of that, really. The industry talks a lot about next generation machines, bigger functionality being a key part of that. But they're perhaps not as common or as visible out there in the market as we'd have liked. This has been a conversation going on for some time.
Yeah.
Is there, some resistance, or is there complexity that's causing a slowdown of the rollout of such machines and such functionality?
Yeah, look, I think it's a great question, and next generation is something that the ATM industry has to embrace. But it's not simple. It's not as simple as just rolling out a new service. When I take a look at DCC, I kind of say, right, that is kind of a next generation service. It's an additional service that can be offered, but it's probably easier to implement than some others. So what are we looking at? What do other ATMs or ATMs do? It's basically cash withdrawal and balance checking. There have been successful pockets of innovation such as DCC, but realistically, very little change. The next gen ATMs should facilitate a broader set of engagement between the consumer and their financial institutions. And we'd like to be part of that. Whether people are looking to remit funds across borders, collect FX while traveling, or any new innovations, Fexco will look to support our partners to deliver those next gen services. But I go back to it, it's not simple to do. A lot of the ATM architecture is legacy. A lot of the ATMs are of an older generation, and with banks looking to maybe reduce the number of ATMs they have in play, and IADs looking to maybe, I suppose, deploy simpler ATMs that can have simpler solutions. This is going to be a long road, but it's something that we need to embrace at the same time.
Makes absolute sense. And I wanted to just go back to some of the bits you covered in the opening question of our interview here. And it's really about the sort of drivers of DCC and of these revenue opportunities.
Sure.
So we'd spoken, about DCC being crucial for the international market and tourism. What trends do you see there in terms of tourism and the profitability of ATMs?
Yeah, look, I suppose when we take a look at it and we say, where is DCC gone today? We've gone through a tough couple of years in regards to it. COVID was tough for everyone, obviously, but for an organization such as ourselves that is involved in FX services, and FX services mean we need to see people travel. We did see a massive reduction in overseas travel as borders closed across the world. But what we didn't expect was that many people took the last plane home and were holed up in where their country of origin was for the whole of the pandemic. And with these, they tried to, they were still accessing cash via their ATMs and they were accessing international accounts. From our perspective, this was great for us. Our ATM network showed a strong resilience during COVID, much more than maybe our retail network did, where most merchants were closed. But when we rushed forward to the end of summer 2021, we saw the travel rebound, particularly in Europe. Now, we didn't plan for Omicron at the tail end of 2021, which gave us a bit of a kick in the ass, like, so to speak. But thankfully, now we're seeing all markets opening up, with an example of Japan only opening up as recent as last month. Other places like China, we're still going to wait for a little bit longer. And then when we take a look, I suppose, to kind of like the travel and tourism element of it, it's the bedrock of what we actually do. So we need to see those FX volumes across our partners. Happy to say, like, from our perspective, Fexco is a global company. We're operating across 60 or so countries. So the impacts on travel tend to be regional, with the exception of COVID. So with tourists choosing to go to other regions, if we're seeing a downturn in one region, we've also seen a huge rebound in travel from both sectors. So both business and tourism. This is a pent-up demand from a tourism perspective that we're seeing. So many people that couldn't go on holidays over the last number of years have banked away the reserves of funds, and they're traveling now. So we're seeing higher numbers than we ever did back in 2019. In regards to business travel, that is also rebounding. It actually probably rebounded at a slightly slower rate than tourism, but people do business with people. Zoom and Teams, although we're using it now, are great. But people do buy from people, and nothing is like eyeballing that buyer or seller. And we're also seeing that conferences again are at full swing, full blast. So all of these are driving the opportunity for DCC as we go forward.
Some great opportunities to be had. And what of the benefits for the user? I mean, we've talked about tourism and the tourist being key.
Sure.
Is it a matter of being able to budget, being clear about what you're spending, what you're withdrawing, etc.? What else is it really that's driving the usage?
So in regards to usage, I suppose, I think, what we're seeing in more recent times is that consumers are kind of saying, I need to be able to be aware of what I'm actually spending here. Being able to use your card is a fantastic facility, but actually having the ability to be able to budget a little bit more in regards to cash, being able to kind of know how much you have defined spending limits, apply that across your family as well, so as you can literally see exactly what everybody is spending, is really beneficial to anybody that's on a tight budget. We're all more concerned when it comes to the energy crisis. We're all more concerned when it comes to different factors within Europe, such as the war in Ukraine. People are looking to secure funds and keep them for a period of time. Certainly when we look to some of our states in Central and Eastern Europe, countries that are bordering the likes of Russia and Ukraine, people are withdrawing cash. They're concerned about outages, electricity outages. They also want the stability to know that they have a certain amount of cash in them if they have to travel at short notice. So that's a key benefit for those type of people. But even in other markets, the UK, Ireland, Germany, people are looking to budget an awful lot more than they were previously.
Perfect. It sounds like there's some really great opportunities for the ATM industry, opportunities that DCC are going to drive, and right across the world as well. It's been really interesting to speak with you, Shane. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben. Really appreciate it and enjoyed it.